Arizona fans, I am so sorry. Ladies and gentlemen, today I want to talk about the Utah Hockey Club, their fantastic start to the season, and just how exciting they are already. Through their first two games, Utah is 2-0-0, and both games have been so much fun to watch. And today I want to break those games down, see what this season could look like for Utah in the future, and talk about just how good this young core is, because it is ridiculous. So make sure you watch till the end for all of the discussions, and hit that subscribe button if you're new for more hockey content just like this all throughout the year. Now, we saw Utah play their first game against Connor Bedard's Chicago Blackhawks in Utah, and it was an absolute event. Just check out the crowd at the end of the game.
Donato comes together with Crouse, down to the final 5 seconds in the crowd at Delta Center, waves their towels and celebrates. The inaugural season begins with a win for the Utah Hockey Club.
It was absolutely electric, and it kind of put into context the fact that just a few months ago, we had Utah announced as a relocation team, and already we're seeing them play games and win games. But now I want to talk about just how scary Utah might look for not just the future, but the now. A lot of people know how good that prospect pool is, know how good the young core there is in Utah and Arizona, but now people are starting to see it finally translate on to the NHL, finally translate to NHL success, and that is a scary thing, especially in the Western Conference. Now, if you guys saw my bold predictions video a couple of months back, you know that I had Utah making the playoffs. When it came to my official standings predictions, I had them finishing third in the Central with 99 points. So to me, this start isn't really much of a surprise. But I think for a lot of people in the NHL world, Utah was a team that was going to take some next steps. They were going to show off that youth core quite well, but there was a lot of questions over whether they'd be a playoff team and finally be able to take that big step. For a lot of people, 2026 seemed a lot more likely. And I could absolutely see why. I mean, that Utah core had some good moments back in Arizona, but they were never able to string consistent success together, and it seemed like whenever they needed to go for a big push, they had to go on a big losing streak and push themselves out of the playoff race. But this time, this Utah team just feels different. And so far, the stats are absolutely backing it up. Now, we're only a couple games into the season, of course, but you look at where Utah is in terms of expected goals. Right now, they're 11th in the league in expected goals for per 60, offense generated. But then you look at expected goals against per 60, and this was the biggest thing that I needed to see Utah improve on year over year. Arizona's defense was just dreadful last year. There's no shying away from that fact. But Utah went out. They got a lot of different players from this last offseason, and look where they are now. In terms of expected goals against per 60, they're 12th best in the league, which isn't, top tier or anything, but just the fact that Utah is in the upper half of the league defensively is a huge improvement over where they were before. That, if they get average defense this year, they're a playoff team to me easily. Now, a big reason why I saw Utah taking a step was not just because of the defense, but I also thought that Clayton Keller was going to have a massive season. Utah probably thought the same thing too. They gave him the captaincy right before the season begins, and I just love to see that. But maybe a little bit controversially, in my Hart Trophy predictions, I had Saros first place, but I also had Clayton Keller third, and I had him in the top 3 because I thought Utah was going to be not just a playoff team, but a strong playoff team, and Keller was going to be a big reason for it. To me, this year is going to be a career season for Keller in a lot of ways. You can see when it comes to Keller last season, we saw a little bit of a dip production from the year before, going from 86 points to 76, but he's somebody that I thought was going to be upwards to the 100-point range. I thought he was going to be ridiculous this season, and so far we got a pretty good start to that. In 2 games, he has 1 goal, 2 assists for 3 points. And early in the preseason, we already saw Keller have some of the sauce against the LA Kings. This goal was just so silky smooth and a sign of things to come. And then we saw in the first game of the season, him starting off with a bang, a goal versus Chicago in the first period. The puck just goes off Schmaltz's leg. Keller makes a great play to start out the rush, and then he gets the loose puck in front of the net. Again, a sign of things to come. Then we have an assist in this Islanders game, which made it 2-1 Utah, a pivotal point in the game. Keller ends up getting the puck, creates some separation there for Sergachev, and he just rifles it to make it 2-1 Utah. And then this next assist was easily his most impressive. As you can see, it's 3-2 Islanders, Utah on the power play, 12 minutes left to go in the third, and this play next is what MVPs are made of. Keller ends up making the simple play, getting it to Schmaltz, and they end up recycling on the blue line. Then Keller gets it back, and look how he connects to Guenther. A perfect perfect pass on the tape, and they're able to tie it right up. Speaking of which, we need to talk about Dylan Guenther, man, because he has been on a different level. After he put up some great numbers with Arizona and getting that mega contract to start out the season for Utah in 2 games, he has 4 goals for 4 points. You had the first goal in Utah hockey club history, and Guenther, it was just a patented goal from him. You see this entry by Kesselring, and Guenther makes no mistake. If you give him the puck at any point in the offensive zone, he's able to score on it. Honestly, one of the best shots out of any young player in the NHL right now. But to me, the OT goal that secured the win for Utah against the Islanders was the most impressive goal by Guenther this season. This to me shows the continuation and the development in his game. You can see here, it's a developing 3-on-1 for Utah, and he plays it perfectly. He gets the side pass here to Durzi, but look what Guenther does. As Durzi and Cooley are both coming up to the net and trying to create chaos, this shuffles the Islanders D to the net. But look what Guenther is able to do here. He stops up at the perfect moment, creates some separation, and just rifles it to make it 5-4. But what Guenther was able to do with the awareness in the situation, being able to create that space for himself, knowing that the Islanders of defensemen are going to be coming back, that they're going to be wanting to make a defensive play and wanting to go to the net to protect it, Guenther is able to find the perfect spot, and Utah benefits because of it. Am I having this whole segment on Guenther because he's on my fantasy team? Not entirely. It is a factor, but Guenther has just been ridiculous, and it's hard to deny just how good that shot has been, how good of a goal scorer he's been too. It's not just that shot, he's also developed his separation speed, he's been able to develop his hockey sense too, and that has really taken him leaps and bounds in the NHL thus far. I also want to talk about Logan Cooley, who on the flip side of Guenther has been a playmaking machine so far. I was worried that we'd see a little bit of a sophomore slump of Cooley, but so far he has perfectly negated those concerns. You see in 2 games, he has 4 assists, 4 points already. But to me, the most important and really the greatest assist that Cooley's had so far was on the Dylan Guenther overtime winner, doing the work on this 3-on-3. You can see as we have Anthony Duclair coming around with his speed on the boards, he ends up giving a give and go with his D partner, but look how Cooley's able to get that stick in, able to get it off Dobson, strip the puck, and eventually, of course, Dylan Guenther would get that goal. But there was a couple of plays like that, especially in the overtime, where Cooley was making brilliant defensive reads, using his skating in the perfect way, and that is the growth I wanted to see out of his game. The production hopefully would have increased, but I wanted to see him adapt more as a centerman, be more on the, be able to read defenses a little bit better, and be able to make those plays that lead to goals in the end, and we're seeing him in that second game already showing that. And the last player I want to mention specifically is Connor Ingram, who has been great to start out the season. Save percentage-wise, it's not going to look too great because that game versus the Islanders, he let on quite a few goals, but still had some 10-bell saves, looked incredible at different points in the game, and kept the Utah Hockey Club in it. That was the most important thing. And you also have that game versus Chicago where he was lights out. And I think Ingram is going to be the most important player now for Utah this next year. Goaltending was a strength last season under Ingram. He was so good. He got a .907 save percentage in 50 games, working with the defense that he was working with. He did about as good as he could have. If he's still at that level for this next year, then again, I think Utah's going to be in a playoff spot, but he needs to stay consistent. That is going to be the main thing going forward. Utah needs him to be the man still for them. And if he is, there's going to be more success to come. We just look throughout all the lineup, and there's so many good stories so far. You got Barrett Hayton, who I didn't even mention, who has looked really good in these first couple of games, centering both Keller and Schmaltz, and it's good to see him rebound after just the worst possible season last year of Arizona. But of course, you got Keller, Cooley, Guenther, Schmaltz has looked good, Matias Maccelli has had his moments, but you even have the depth there that's looked good too. Alex Kerfoot, Josh Doan had a huge goal late in the game in that third versus the Islanders. Lawson Crouse is, of course, fantastic as always. But you look at the depth, and the fact that they have guys like Crouse, Kerfoot, Doan on the fourth line, they're spreading it out quite a bit, but so far it's been easily working, especially for their offense. And then you got the defensive side, which has had some iffy moments so far, but in terms of the expected goals, they've looked good, and Mikhail Sergachev has looked fantastic so far. Sean Durzi has started the year off well. Ian Cole has been solid. Michael Kesselring continues to be one of the more underrated D in the league. If that continues, this defense is going to hold, and as long as they hold, that's all Utah needs. The big thing too is, of course, John Marino being injured right now, but he's somebody that hopefully will be coming back soon, and once he does, that Utah defense is going to be looking a lot lot better. Hopefully, he didn't have the greatest year last season for New Jersey, but I still have hope he could be really impactful for this Utah defense. Now, of course, I understand we're only a couple games into the season, so they're not an automatic playoff team up to this point, and I did think at the start we'd see Utah play well, but the big question marks would be if they would be able to sustain that with their younger core in the second half of the season when things get really tough, really gritty, really grindy. That's going to be, I think, the big question for Utah is, will they be able to hold this? Arizona has had their good moments, their good starts in the past, but it feels like it's always crumbled at the wrong times. For Utah, if they will be able to change that, that'll be the big question. But so far, with the hype that they have going right now, with the young core there and the steps that they've taken, I still see Utah being a playoff team and being a good one at that. I think no matter what, though, Utah has been able to show what is so important and what is so exciting about their future in these first couple games. Even if they were to miss the playoffs, I don't think it's going to be by too much, especially in that competitive Western Conference. But they're a team that I think has a fantastic future, one of the best young cores in the league, and now it's just up to them to fully realize it. Really, I think the big thing that could hold them back is just how competitive that Central Division is. I mean, you got top teams like Nashville and Colorado that have already gotten a loss this season, but you have St. Louis starting off 2-0. You got Winnipeg, Dallas, Minnesota all getting wins in their first games, which is pretty big for them. It's going to be a bloodbath in this Central. It's definitely one of the more, it's probably the most underrated division in the league, in my opinion, but Utah making it a lot more competitive is going to make it a lot scarier. We'll see, though. I mean, I think there is a possibility that St. Louis, Minnesota, those two maybe over are better than what I expected. If that's the case, then I think Utah's going to have a much harder time making it in the end. I think St. Louis and Minnesota need to miss if Utah has a chance at this, but you're looking at that Central Division, no matter what, it is going to be fun to see them battling, being competitive, which is the one thing we wanted to see. And if they were to miss again, I don't think it's a major deal considering the strength of the prospect pool as well coming up, and guys like TJ Ginla, who honestly could be in the NHL as soon as next year of how competitive they are. You got Cole Baudouin from this last draft. You on the defense, you got Dmitry Simashev. You got also Domino Boot from that 2023 draft. You got Maverick Lamoureux, Will Skahan, Michael Robel as well on the goaltending side coming up. A plethora of options here for Utah, and I don't see how they go wrong in the future. With how well they've been managed recently, with how well they've drafted recently, they're a scary team over this next decade. They're going to be a lot of fun. It saddens me that Arizona was so close to seeing this core really start to show their full potential, but that's just the cruelty of the hockey world. For Utah, though, this is about as good of a relocation situation as you could possibly get roster-wise. They might not have the immediate impact that you would see out of maybe a Vegas in terms of expansion teams, but I think in terms of what they've been able to accomplish so far, how much they're able to fight in these games, and how good they're going to be in the future, Utah is going to be scaring the NHL real soon here, folks. But just looking at what this lineup could look like in the future is scary because you're going to have TJ Ginla, you're going to have Cole Baudouin, you're of course going to have the progress in players like Cooley, in Josh Doan, in Lawson Crouse on that bottom six, and they'll be even better than they have been before. And you also look at that defense, which I think is in the position to improve the most with the prospect pool. Of course, Dmitry Simashev, I think, is going to be a defensive beauty for the team and exactly what they need. Maverick Lamoureux as a big physical D is going to bring some value there too. But you also look at some of the depth players they have, like Will Skahan, who I think are going to be really underrated for this team coming up. And you have a good, solid couple of pieces there already, like Sergachev, who is still young up to this point, which is crazy to think about, but also Sean Durzi, Yusuf Valimaki, who have really improved themselves over the last year and a half. And also the goaltending. I mean, Connor Ingram has shown well, but Michael Robel, to me, is somebody that can be a good starter in the future, even if he's had some shaky moments here and there. But he's somebody that I think could be a starter if everything pans out. And for Arizona, that would be the best case scenario. I think maybe the big thing that they're missing is that number one true franchise goaltender, and maybe they want to get as well a higher pace offensive D in the future. I don't know. But I think for Utah, with the pieces they have in the full group, with how much depth they have there, that is going to be an obvious strength. And they have, I think, the superstars in Keller, in Cooley especially, to get them there. Guenther especially too could be a star level player if he continues his trajectory. So everything right now is looking great for Utah. We'll see if they're actually able to become a Stanley Cup winning team, but this core has shown everything well up to this point. Now, Utah does have a little bit of a tough stretch here coming up. They play the Rangers tomorrow, then the Devils on the 14th. You do got the Ducks, but then you got the Bruins, the Senators, the Avalanche, the Kings. Some pretty competitive teams here. No slouches whatsoever, so Utah will still have to prove itself in the future and continue proving itself. But I think especially after the All-Star break, if they're in that playoff spot, if they're comfortable, that would be great to see. But I think after that is where the challenge really begins for this team. Will that youth be able to stay consistent? That will be the big question, but with how they proved themselves so far, I hope it happens. I hope Utah is able to get some playoff hockey here in their first season, because that would be magical. Let me know down below, what do you guys think of this Utah Hockey Club's future? What do you think of their start to the season? Do you think they're legit? Do you think they're a playoff team, or do you think they'll still miss this season? I would love to hear all your thoughts down below. And of course, all the conversation in the comments is just so much fun. So whatever you guys think, I'd love to hear it down below. And of course, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell if you haven't already. Share the video with all the hockey fans and all the Utah fans as well that you guys know online. It would really help the channel quite a bit. And of course, make sure you click on this card for all of my I guess ranking content in one playlist. I don't know what to promote. But whatever you guys want to watch on the channel, I appreciate it quite a bit. And thank you guys so much for tuning in. I will see you guys in the next one, and I hope you have a great hockey day, a great weekend, and goodbye.